In today's video, we continue on with our NHL offseason plan series. We're now the 22nd ranked team in the NHL's regular season, the New York Rangers. The Rangers were a team that saw significant change throughout the regular season. Lots of drama early on about certain players being made available for trade. In today's video, we're going to discuss how the season finished out, take a look at the results, and look at the expectations looking forward to the 2025 NHL Draft, free agency, and any trades we may see for the team this coming offseason. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss in today's video regarding the offseason expectations of the New York Rangers, who finished 22nd in the league this past year, which is a significant drop from the previous season. They're a team that certainly had a fair bit of drama around the team early on, especially. There was certainly some activity that transpired last offseason, which didn't sit well with many of the players. And of course, we found out early on that the GM, Chris Drury, had made some of the key veterans on the team available for trade as well, and it just kind of set the whole season off kilter, and it certainly was not, it just wasn't a good way to start, and it really just got off the rails quick, and the Rangers had a major setback this year. So first we're going to recap the 24-25 season, take a look at some key team stats, then we're going to look at the offseason stuff. So we'll look at the cap space, what do they have for internal business, RFAs, UFAs, trades, draft, free agency, and discuss all of the expectations. So first up, let's recap the 24-25 campaign here for the New York Rangers, who finished with 85 points this year, drastically down from the season before, where they had 114 points. Certainly were a playoff team and went deep into playoffs. They finished with a record of 39, 36, and 7 compared to the year before, which was 55, 23, and 4. Significant drop overall for the Blue Shirts this year. They scored 255 goals this year, which was 12th best in the NHL. Not a significant drop as well. Last year they scored 282. That's 27 goals less going in for them this year. Goals against was a step backwards too. They allowed 255 as well, so they're even in that sense for the season for goals, 4 goals against. That ranks them 19th in the league. The year before, they only gave up 229. So they scored 27 fewer goals, and they allowed 26 more goals, which was over a 50-goal swing overall for the plus-minus for the season, which is really, really significant overall. The power play and penalty kill were night and day. The penalty kill was pretty respectable at 80.3%. The power play, not so much, 17.6 for 28th best in the league. Taking a look at their goaltending stats, of course, Igor Shesterkin carried the bulk of the workload with a record of 27, 29, and 5. He had a 2.86 goals against and a 905 save percentage. That's certainly not Shesterkin-like numbers, but the team in front of him, for the most part, especially on the back end, was not overly great this year. So you can put the blame of some of it on him, but overall, it really lies on the entire team. Jonathan Quick, as the backup again, had a record of 11, 7, and 2 with a 3.17 goals against and an 893 save percentage. Looking at the team leaders and points this past year, Artemi Panarin continues to be a leader in production with 89 points. JT Miller was second on the team, although all of these points didn't come with the Rangers. He finished with 70 points. Mika Zibanejad had 62. Adam Fox, 61. And Vinny Trocheck, 59. Of course, like I said, we saw a lot of change throughout the season, including trading captain Jacob Trouba early on to the Anaheim Ducks. We know last offseason, as I mentioned, this kind of got the ball rolling with how they went about things with Barclay Goodrow. They tried to move Jacob Trouba. He blocked it. We heard that he and Drury had some conversations and things were supposedly worked out, but it became a distraction pretty quick early into the season. You could tell Trouba wasn't playing his best, and it just, to me, it was starting to fester within the team. So Trouba eventually was moved of course, to the Anaheim Ducks. Throughout the course of the year, they ended up making a number of other trades, including the one with Vancouver, where they pick up JT Miller, who, of course, was going through a bunch of drama there on the West Coast. They, of course, part of that package included Philip Hedl going to Vancouver. They picked up a variety of other players throughout the year, including Arthur Kaliev, Will Borgen, Carson Soucy. Ryan Lindgren, of course, was moved out, a long veteran, of course, who blocks a lot of shots, defensive defenseman. Eventually traded Riley Smith as well back to Vegas. And we saw, like I said, a lot of turnover within that roster. And of course, all that led to head coach Peter Laviolette being dismissed from his position as well at the end of the year. Now, going into the offseason, they only have $8.4 million in cap space. They have $87 million in total already committed to 19 contracts out of a maximum 23-player roster. So that's, 4 more signings at most for $8.4 million. That doesn't average out to be a whole heck of a lot. So I fully suspect to see the Rangers make at least one or more cap-cutting, saving-type moves. Now, let's first, before we jump into a lot of the other speculation, let's look at their internal business. This is going to be their list of restricted free agents that need new deals or can be let go, or UFAs and players that could be eligible for a contract extension this offseason. This is usually the first order of business for a lot of teams that try to look after internal stuff first so they have an idea where things sit. RFAs include Will Cooley, Adam Enstrom, Arthur Kaliev, Matt Rempe, K-Andre Miller, Zach Jones, and Matt Robertson. Now, out of that list, Will Cooley is probably the most prominent. I think he gets probably a bridge deal, but I have no doubt Will Cooley will get signed and be on the roster next year. Matt Rempe won't cost too much, and we know his role is kind of unique, and I know he gets criticized at times, but I think he can still be worth keeping around and be a work in progress here. I still think his game needs to evolve, but certainly worth signing. K-Andre Miller is going to be an interesting player. He's definitely going to be getting a contract. Whether or not he stays in New York is another question, which we'll examine in the next segment. But certainly, Miller, Zach Jones, Matt Robertson, I fully suspect they're all going to get contracts. It's just a matter if they remain with the Blue Shirts or not. Enstrom, Kaliev, kind of difficult to say what the future holds there, but it is possible that all these players could be qualified. Maybe signing, of course, they don't all need to be on the NHL roster next year. We know that wouldn't be possible, and it would be unlikely given where they're all at in their careers anyway, but I would suspect that a couple of them could either not be qualified or possibly have their rights traded out. On the UFA side, there's not much. It's Nicholas Aubé-Kubel and Calvin DeHaan. I don't expect either player to return to New York, and there's not a lot of really eligible for extensions, but there is a few prominent players, including Artemi Panarin, who's coming near the end of that big free agent contract he signed. Hard to imagine he's entering the final season. Goalie Jonathan Quick, at his age, I would suspect they probably want to see how this season goes before they extend him. I mean, he's about to be 40 years old. Will he continue on? His numbers this past year weren't great, but like I said, I don't know that's a great indictment on where he's at in his career, but they'll have to wait and see where things go with him. I would imagine it's a wait-and-see approach. Carson Soucy's eligible, as well as Braden Schneider. Schneider, I can see being the main one that maybe gets a contract done. Soucy, I would suspect it's going to be wait-and-see. And Panarin, I don't know really what the future holds for him. We're going to discuss him here as well coming up in the next segment. So let's jump into that next segment, which is the top questions facing the franchise going into the offseason. So in this segment, we're going to look at the draft, free agency, trades, and what we can expect, or at least what we think they're going to be doing here. Of course, they get a new head coach, Mike Sullivan, formerly of the Pittsburgh Penguins, knows Chris Drury very well through USA Hockey. They've worked together before, so no, it's not like they have a getting to know each other phase. We know Mike Sullivan has been around the NHL a long time, has had a lot of success in Pittsburgh, multiple Stanley Cups. But of course, the big question is, wow, what can he do right off to make this team better? I'm not really sure, to be completely honest, that he's going to come in with some new magical system that Laviolette or Gerard Gallant before him didn't see. Sullivan's a good coach. I'm not saying he is not able to make some adjustments. A lot of times with new coaches, you do get a bit of a bump, usually resulting in players trying to play harder to impress their new bench boss. However, with Sullivan, I think a lot of the issues that the Rangers ran into last year really didn't have a lot to do with coaching. I think it had more to do with anything from the distractions from the front office. And I know normally that shouldn't be an issue, but clearly for some of these veteran players on this team, it was. You could tell that there was a major disconnect between what they thought the team should be doing and how the veterans were being treated. I think their effort levels certainly represented that on the ice. Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad certainly had a lot of nights when you really could question their efforts and whether or not their heart was in it, and you could tell. So I think that was more of an indictment on Chris Drury than it was on Peter Laviolette. I think over time, Laviolette kind of ran out of things he could do to try to motivate them and try to keep their heads in it. And as the season went along and they knew that they were out of the playoffs, I just think they kind of lost hope. They kind of lost their ability to care. And I don't think that was necessarily a coaching issue, not giving Laviolette a complete pass here. But, his tenures typically don't run super long, usually 2-3 years, and he's starting to wear on his players. But I think management, and Chris Drury specifically, should be shouldering the brunt of the issue here for how things went down. But we'll see. But they have a new coach. He'll bring in some new ways of doing things, and like I said, he's got a lot of success. So I'm sure, if nothing else, he'll get a new level of energy and effort level, which should lead to at least some better results. But we'll have to see how they're going to change the roster. Of course, like I said, big things were leaked out throughout the course of the season with this team. There was reports early on that Drury had made it known that some of his veteran players, not only Trouba, who ended up getting traded, were available for trade, but Chris Kreider's name was specifically mentioned as well. There were times when we've heard from NHL insiders that they feel like the Rangers will speak to Mika Zibanejad about moving as well, and there's lots of questions about the future of Artemi Panarin. They have to kind of take a look at Panarin and say, okay, does he want to stay, for one? Does he want to re-sign? And then secondly, does that make sense for us with what we feel like we have with this team? Does it make sense to then extend him now? That contract that they signed in free agency has worked out pretty well. He was one of the better free agent signings, put up his production. But with where he's at with his career and his age now, does it make sense to kind of revisit that again? Or should they consider moving him with a year left and try to recoup some assets? I don't know where things stand with Panarin on that front, but I think it's definitely something that's going to be considered. I think out of all the veterans, the main one we could see move on is Chris Kreider, but I also kind of wonder maybe if Sullivan's influence might keep some of the veterans around. We saw at Four Nations, how much of an opportunity Sullivan gave to Kreider, even though he wasn't really playing that great in the NHL at the time. They sat out a guy like Kyle Connor at the Four Nation gold medal game, and gave guys like Brock Nelson and Chris Kreider in the lineup to give them the go ahead to play. To me, that was shocking. Kyle Connor is one of the best goal scorers in the NHL, and he couldn't get in the lineup. I was completely shocked at that decision by the head coach there. But, again, will his influence make a difference here on some of these veteran players? I'm not so sure. Based on how the season ended, we sure got the vibe that Chris Kreider's time with the Rangers was likely coming to a close, and I would label him as the veteran most likely to get traded, which will free up some cap space and see what other things they can do. As far as Mika Zibanejad goes, he made it pretty clear that he's got a protection, no move clause in his contract, and didn't sound like he was interested in waiving it. So I think he's most likely back. And for Panarin, I don't know where things stand with him, so I'm going to probably put that at 50-50. Like I said, they have limited space to get their RFA signed, so moving some of these other guys will be critical. With it comes to the D-core, we know they didn't have a great season. K-Andre Miller is one of those players that's kind of had an up and down couple of years here. I don't know if they want to extend him and give a big commitment to him, or if they would prefer to trade him. I would label K-Andre Miller at least a 50-50 chance of getting moved. As far as Zach Jones, I wouldn't rule that out either. He's looking for more opportunity, and if he doesn't think he can get that, or if the Rangers don't feel like they're going to be able to provide that, then I suspect he could be on the trade block here as well. So certainly if they didn't have to sign Miller on their own cap, if they trade him instead, that'll make things a little bit easier and might allow for some upgrades in other areas. Otherwise, depending on what they do with creating some space, I don't think they're going to be able to do a whole lot in free agency. So I would suspect that the free agent part is probably going to be relatively quiet. It'll be on the trade market if they do make any significant changes. And like I said, it's a little bit tricky with some of the veterans they have because of trade protection in their contract. So it's kind of tough to say 100%. But like I said, I think Kreider is the main one. I'd say K'Andre Miller is probably the next most likely. And then after that, you'd have to say, okay, well, maybe Panarin if they decide that they're not going to trade him. And even if they... See, here's the thing, though. If they go into the season with Panarin and they improve enough to be in the playoff race, they're not going to want to move him, and then they're going to risk losing him for nothing. They may be okay with that, considering that they got him for nothing as a free agent. They may look at it as, an even kind of walk away in that sense, but it doesn't make sense for them to trade him at the deadline if they're going to be in the playoff race. So it depends on how they feel about their club. If they feel like playoffs are far from a guarantee and getting back in the race is going to be hard next year, then maybe they move him. But to be honest, based on that Metro Division, I don't see the Metro Division as being overly stacked and tough right now. I think with a few tweaks, the Rangers could easily get back into playoff contention. So I think a big decision has to be made on Panarin ahead of time, and then we'll see where they go from there. Of course, at the draft, being out of the playoffs allows them to have a bit of a higher pick. They have the 12th overall selection. Their first-round pick was tied to a previous trade, but it was protected, so that where it is, they have the option to keep it. Of course, the 12th overall selection will be a pretty decent player by the looks of things. Looking at the draft, it's not... I wouldn't say this draft is super deep, but at 12, you're probably looking at a player that's going to be a couple years out, but still somebody who could be, a top 4D or, maybe a second line type of forward. So, they have to look at that and decide what's best based on who's available. And is there an opportunity to trade that pick and to get immediate help? Because we know the Rangers want to try to get into the playoffs, and they want to extend their what they feel is still a window to win here. They've got a good mix of players on this team that are older and some younger guys, and I really think that when it comes to an owner like James Dolan and the way this team is operated, they don't want to go back into a rebuild. It hasn't been that long since they really came out of a quick rebuild. So to me, they're going to want to win as soon as possible. I wouldn't be shocked to see them trade that pick, but again, they're picking 12th overall. They have a big decision to make there. It's going to depend on what's available. So let me know your thoughts. I think we should see a decent amount of activity out of this team. We've already got a big piece done with the new coach. Now it's a matter of maybe trading a few more veterans, shaking things up, including some of the RFAs, looking ahead to the draft. And then, like I said, I don't expect a lot in free agency. If they do make any signings outside of the organization, probably more likely depth moves, but we'll see where things go. Let me know your thoughts on the New York Rangers expectations for the 25 offseason down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.